Hello and a very warm welcome to the Sociopedia channel. Today, we're jumping right into Chapter 2 for Class 11, Terms, Concepts, and Their Use in Sociology. Ready? Let's begin.
So what are we going to cover today? Well, here's a quick look at our plan. We'll start with why sociologists even need special concepts. Then we'll get into social groups, social stratification, status and role, and wrap it all up with how society and social control work.
All right. First up, why can't we just use everyday words and plain old common sense to talk about society? Let's dig in.
I mean, it's a fair question, right? Why do we need special terms for things we already know, like family or power? Well, it's not about making things complicated. It's actually about helping us see the world we think we know with completely new eyes. You see, here's the key difference. Common sense knowledge is really subjective, It's based on our own personal experiences. But sociological knowledge, that tries to be objective. It's built on careful, systematic study and uses very precise concepts to make sure everyone is on the same page.
So really, you should think of these concepts as tools. They're like keys that are specially designed to unlock the doors to a much deeper understanding of how our society actually works. Okay, let's move on to the next section and talk about the real building blocks of any society: social groups. Now, it's super important to understand that a social group is way more than just a bunch of people standing around. It's a collection of people who are constantly interacting, and they share common interests, values, and norms. And you can compare that to something called a quasi-group. This is just a collection of people who happen to be in the same place at the same time, like passengers at a railway station. They don't really have any structure or sense of belonging, at least not yet. So what makes a true social group? Well, you need these key ingredients. The interaction has to be persistent. There are stable patterns of behavior. There's that we feeling, a sense of belonging, shared interests, common values, and some kind of definable structure. And this slide just lays it out so clearly. We basically live in two types of groups. You've got your primary groups, think family and your closest friends. They're small, personal, and super intimate. Then you have secondary groups, which are larger, more formal, and goal-oriented, like your school or your workplace. Okay, moving on, let's look at how societies are almost always organized into different layers of inequality. Sociologists call this social stratification. The easiest way to think about this is like the layers of rock you see in the Earth's crust. Society has layers too, and these layers, or strata, mean that different groups get unequal access to things like money, power, and prestige. Now, this is really interesting. This table shows a great comparison between two major systems of stratification. On one side, you have the caste system, which is based on birth. You can't change it. It's rigid and closed. On the other, you have the class system, which is supposed to be more open and based on what you achieve through your own efforts. And this quote from the sociologist A.R. Desai is so insightful. He pointed out that just because people from different castes started mixing in public places like trains and buses, it didn't mean that the deep structural inequality of caste had just disappeared. Okay, so we've looked at society's layers. Let's zoom in a little bit and talk about the individual's place within all this, using the concepts of status and role. This is a really key distinction. You occupy a status, it's like a position, such as student, doctor, or parent. But you play a role. That's the behavior that's expected of you when you're in that position. So they're really two sides of the same coin. And your status can be one of two kinds. An ascribed status is one you're born with or get involuntarily, like your age or your race. An achieved status, on the other hand, is something you acquire through your own abilities and efforts, like getting a degree or becoming a manager. Now, having multiple roles can sometimes lead to what we call role conflict. This happens when the expectations of one of your roles clash with another. The classic example is a working mother who has to juggle the demands of her job with the responsibilities of her family. All right, our final section. Let's figure out how society keeps everything running smoothly and make sure people follow the rules of the game. This is all about social control.
So, what is social control? Put simply, it's all the different ways a society tries to regulate people's behavior to get them to conform and bring non-conforming members back into line. This control can be really formal, through official things like laws, the police, and the entire legal system. But it can also be super informal, things like gossip, being made fun of, or even getting a disapproving look from your friends and family. And this quote from Peter L. Berger is pretty powerful.
He reminds us that behind every form of social control, whether it's formal or informal, there's always the potential for force. It might only be used as a last resort, but the simple threat of it is often enough to keep things in order. So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with a question to think about. How do all these concepts we talked about, social groups, stratification, status, role, and social control, how do they show up and shape your own life every single day?
And that's it for our look at these core sociological concepts. If you want to dive deeper and get complete notes for this chapter, make sure you check out our Telegram channel. You can find the link for it right in the description below. Thanks for joining us.